Again in the second half of our show, ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
How's it going, everybody? That is not the correct intro, but
No,
we are here tonight for another Beatles show. Obviously, Delacommon's getting all the Beatles files mixed up because we have been doing quite a bit of Beatles content lately. We're actually the second one in 2 weeks, so it's kind of a big deal here on this channel. The last Beatles video performed very well, but that is not why we are here to talk tonight. I'm sure this video will get some eyes on this channel that don't normally watch this channel. So I am Rob Fishbeck. I'm half the host here at Elder Millennials Behind the Counter. Joining me, as always, is my awesome co-host, Delacommon. What's going on, buddy?
Listen, so much Beatles stuff that I definitely got the intro mixed up. I mean, we've done 2 Beatles episodes, including, with this one included, in a very short time. But I figured we definitely had to come up and talk about the news that came out this week about the ambitious. If you want to,
that's one way to put it.
If you want to set it up, or I can set it up, where it's pretty much the news came out that director Sam Mendes, if you know who Sam Mendes is, he directed American Beauty, Road to Perdition, Revolutionary Road.
One of my favorite indie movies from the 2000s, the kind of indie movie, is Away We Go with John Krasinski and Maya Rudolph. That movie's great. He also directed Skyfall, which is kind of renowned as one of the top 3 like Bond movies of all time.
I'm a fan of him. He did a great series for the BBC. I'm a huge Shakespeare nerd. And he did the Hollow Crown series, which he did Richard III, Henry IV, Part 1 and 2, and then Henry V. So if you haven't checked those out, those are great. But the news came out that Sam Mendes has pitched to Sony. If you read,
it's in development.
It's in development. Well, if you read the press release, everybody was just so enthusiastic that it was just a bidding war. So we're here to talk about this real quick because Rob and I have some thoughts about kind of what is going to go on with this, if it's even going to happen.
So, well, we'll get to all that. And I want to make a few things clear before we hop into this discussion. This is going to be probably the shortest show we've ever done. We just want to hang out for like 15-20 minutes and talk about this. Me and Delacommon haven't even talked about this like in person or on the phone or anything. We have a group chat, and there was one of our friends posted in it yesterday that this had been announced, and then I immediately just kind of like put my 2 cents in. Delacommon started putting his 2 cents in, and I was like, hey, why don't we we're guesting on another show tonight. And I was like, hey, why don't we just go live for a little bit before that show happens and have this conversation? So I say that to say, this channel is not a movie bashing, music bashing channel. We don't bash things. We're not, going for like the clickbaity, negative, contrarian point of view because we think it would perform well or anything. I specifically wanted to use the word skeptical because I feel that I know quite a bit about film, and I definitely know quite a bit about music. So I'll start by saying this. The Beatles are the most well-documented band in the history of rock and roll, in the history of popular music. Okay. Also the biggest. They are by far still they're the biggest band ever. This is not a favorites conversation or who, or some people could say, well, Michael Jackson sold so many records. It's not about that. The Beatles are the peak of the mountain. So you said it. Every studio would want to have this, to acquire this situation. And this was announced that this is the first time ever Ringo Starr, Paul McCartney, the estate of John Lennon, i.e. Sean and Yoko, maybe Julian, and the estate of George Harrison, Olivia, and Danny Harrison, obviously, are approving life rights, and they are approving all of the Beatles' music to be used. So that's huge. So in terms of if you're Sony, that is a celebratory day that they're letting this happen to begin with. Okay. The plan as of now, and then we'll start our conversation. The plan as of now is Sam Mendes is going to release 4 biopics, one on John, Paul, George, and Ringo. And they're going to kind of, from based on the blurb that I read, and I'm smart enough to figure this out, it's going to be, each film will be from their point of view, right? And within that, each film will intersect. They'll all be kind of hitting the same beats. It'll just be each film is a different person. So like, for example, hypothetically, Sullivan Show. You would, in each movie, you would get that same 20 minutes or whatever, but from each Beatles perspective. The recording of Sgt. Pepper, same deal, blah, 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 blah. The Let It Be sessions, same deal, blah, 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 blah. So that way, by the time you got done watching all 4 films, you would have seen the scenes that intersect, the ones that don't. I would also go out on a limb to say there's probably going to be about 10 to 15 minutes of backstory per Beatle for each film. So each film would kind of then stand out on its own just a little bit. And he would release 1 a quarter in 2027. So 1 January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Yeah. My guess would be probably like the last month in each quarter, because you would want to get that December release date for the 4th one. And before we start talking, the smartest thing to do, I'm not saying they're going to do it, but the smartest thing to do would be to bookend them with John and Paul, because if you lead with Ringo or George, which no shade on them, and I know everybody's got their favorites, if you don't lead with John or Paul, that's not a good start. And if you don't end with John or Paul, you're in a situation where you definitely could possibly be having diminishing returns. Those are all the facts. That's what we know. The rest of this is our opinions. So that quote from The Big Lebowski, hey, that's just like your opinion, man. These are our opinions. I would say fairly educated opinions at that. So, Delicom, I'm going to start with you. What are your initial skepticisms about this? What do you think in general? Do you think they could pull this off, et cetera, et cetera?
So I kind of tipped my hand a few minutes ago where I said the word ambitious. It is incredibly ambitious. And to me, this is going to be just, and I'm looking at this as just as a film, like just films.
Yeah.
I'm not even looking at this as like criticisms of what they will or will not do, or skepticisms of like you brought up different scenarios that they may have.
You're talking more business, not
logistics too.
Not the guts of the script. Yeah.
I think this is announced. I don't think this will be the final form of what this ends up being. Because to me, so even if you, let's just say, be conservative and you only go 90 minutes, which most films are not going to be 90 minutes these days.
Not with this property. There's no way. It'd be 220, I think, at the lightest. But go ahead.
So to me, you're going to do, even though, and this is one of the points that we brought up in our discussion on the Discord, but I will share it with everybody here, is that while this is not Lord of the Rings in production scale and time effort,
right,
the amount of things that have to go right for one of these to be good, any movie to be good, is monumental. Like, I think that's one thing that we forget as just casual viewers, kind of the Sisyphus rolling that rock up that hill just to get it, out over the thumb. And you're going to have to hit 4 of these, and they're all going to have to be good if they're going to do the theatrical release. Because like you said, if you're going to do 1 a quarter, you have 1 dud. The first one's a dud or underperformed, or the second, you're dead in the water. So my skepticism is more of just on a couple fronts. One is the ambition. Sam Mendes, I like Sam Mendes as a director. Do I think, to me, that he is the director to do this sort of thing? Right now, no. And we'll all preface this by, we're 100% open and willing to be like completely wrong, and we'll be
Totally.
delighted by, you know, it's not one of these we're taking a position and where position is never going to change. This is just our initial thoughts on it. My second point on that sort of thing is not just the ambition of all that stuff is, and then I brought up the fact of like these have to perform well. If not, my second point is, to me, with the Beatles, we just did an anniversary show of 60 years. So we've had 60 years of the Beatles as a thing. Now, granted, I will give them I will throw in the caveat and acknowledge that, yes, it is pointed out, especially in the press release. The press release is the most masturbatory Hollywood press release of all time. If you listen, read the wording, it's gross. Just the terminology. It has nothing to do with the actual content, but the kind of not really corporate speak, but Hollywood speak when they're talking about things. It was just terrible. So, I completely lost my train of thought. Oh, okay. So what I'm going to do? So we've had 60 years of the Beatles.
Yes.
Rob, can you name me, outside of A Hard Day's Night, what is the definitive Beatles in that 60 years movie?
Well, so this is why this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this show, and I'm sure this is going to be longer than 20 minutes, but we do have another show, so we do have a heart out. But so to answer your question, it's going to take me a second. Within this 60 years, I'm going to keep going with what you were saying. Within this 60 years, we have had constant content about the Beatles, with the Beatles, for the Beatles, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just going to name some of the highlights. Obviously, you have their movies, A Hard Day's Night, Help, which I love Help. You've got the animated Yellow Submarine movie. You have the documentary, kind of zany, late 60s period Magical Mystery Tour. Okay. It's not great, but it's fine. You have the original Let It Be documentary that came out in 70 or 71. Okay. Granted, we got to skip a little bit, but then we've got Beatles Anthology from the mid 90s, expansive. I mean, everybody but John is literally there talking at a round table, discussing in detail the entire history of the Beatles. Okay. Random other side highlight, Concert for George with Eric Clapton and Tom Petty and all those guys. Okay. You have, as of recent, Ron Howard's 8 Days a Week documentary about the touring life of the Beatles, which is incredible. I'm not even mentioning kind of like we couldn't get the rights to the music. We couldn't get the, documentaries that have kind of gone more under the radar. Yeah. I'm giving you the highlights. Yeah. We had the Paul McCartney 3-2-1 thing on Hulu when him and Rick Rubin sit down and go through dissecting tracks. I mean, it is absolutely incredible. And then the pinnacle being Peter Jackson's Get Back. To me, that was the ultimate Beatles biopic that doubled as a documentary and a real thing. But to me, that was the definitive Beatles biopic, because what do people want to see? A Hard Day's Night. Yeah, they know they're in front of the camera. They're kind of acting. They're doing Paul's grandfather. He's very clean, that's a horrible impression, but yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it was terrible.
Paul's grandfather, right? All of these things. When Peter Jackson released the Get Back thing, whether I was talking to my dad or talking to you or the many other people I spoke to about the Get Back documentary and the countless interviews I've heard of people that I don't know personally, we were all pretty much in agreement of two things. A, this is the definitive behind the scenes. Now they never have to make a Beatles biopic because they found all this footage and Peter Jackson put it together and put this thing out, because what do people want from biopics? Now that's a whole show, honestly, because when Bo Rap came out, Bohemian Rhapsody, Very.
hate that you just said that.
Yeah, well,
Like that.
we call
Yeah.
it Bo Rap. So when Bohemian Rhapsody came out, not to get on a sidetrack, I got text messages from people I know that are they watch 15 movies a year. They can name you 4 or 5 Queen songs. They don't live in the bubbles that we live in. And they thought it was incredible because they've never seen Live Aid. So that was their first time seeing that. Okay. So I do understand the separation of like people that are that run in our circles and then your casual audience. I understand that. But again, so going back to the Get Back doc, that was like the definitive, and I remember, I think it was either you or my dad I was talking to about this. And we were saying like, I think that's going to be it because like they probably don't have a lot of footage lying around from like 64, 67, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then you said it. And I totally agree. And this is another, everybody kind of in our circles agreed on this. And I'm talking a lot of different people, different ages, different backgrounds, all kind of agreed like this needs to be it. Everything that's ever needed to have been said or done on the Beatles has happened. We got that Goofy movie 5 years ago yesterday where the aspiring musician.
So this is getting to my point. And I don't want to, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I wanted to give you a
answer your question.
leeway.
We have it. It's Get Back. But go ahead.
So you brought up the documentaries. You brought up Hard Day's Night. Here's the thing we haven't had in the 60 years of the thing is a non-documentary, non-Hard Day's Night that is to us the definitive Beatles movie in fictitious movie form.
Right.
That's my problem.
This would be that.
But what I'm saying, this is where I'm saying I'm skeptical is, okay, so we have 60 years and none of this has happened. And we talked about this in the Discord. I brought up like also you've had like tangential or like related things. Like you had Across the Universe that was, big when I was, I don't know, in the
that was huge. My
20s.
sisters were obsessed with that soundtrack. Huge.
To me, there's probably a reason why this hasn't been done already. And it's because I think, as you pointed out, and this is one thing we go into, and you and I joke about this, but you actually know my position, like Furley. We joked about it in the last episode that we did about the Beatles, about my railing against Paul McCartney. And my railing against Paul McCartney is nothing personal. Like it's the incessant, as you said, we've always had content. How many times are you going to mine this well for profit? Which I get. Hey, do whatever. You created the Beatles. Like have at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, have at it. But as a fan and as a content consumer, as you pointed out, and we definitely discussed this before about let this be it. The Peter Jackson documentary. Let this be it, because really, how much more are you going to go? Because really, if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, Beatles only encompass a small period of history out of that 60 years that is that went on.
Well, they were banned for 8 years with Ringo. Like, that was it.
So my thing is, if this hasn't been done before, we haven't had this we've had all this Beatle content, and this has never been attempted in the scope that it is. And I also, just my personal taste, and once again, we preface this all by saying, Rob and I will be the first to be delighted if we're wrong. Like, we're not dying on
one to buy tickets. You know.
I don't think Sam Mendes is the director to do this. And I think that what I'm seeing now in this press release is seeing the initial hype of everything going on and getting people excited, because we did just have the 60th anniversary. And the one thing that we commented on, especially with our Beatles thing doing incredibly well, we thought it was very strange for the Beatles that there wasn't really a whole lot of news announcement content. And then, cut to 2 weeks after the 60th anniversary, they announced this project.
So I got so much to say from what you just said. One, I don't know this for sure. Did they, again, this is where I know film production really well. Did they make this announcement to cover up the fact that Madam Web took a giant shit in the box office over the weekend, which is another Sony release?
It's Sony.
To like kind of sprinkle flowers over a pile of shit.
Yeah.
Or were they planning to make this announcement because it's the 60th anniversary of the Beatles coming to America and the whole Beatlemania thing? You just said something great. You said as a film person and as somebody who watches content, as whatever, you use the word content. I haven't seen the Bob Marley biopic yet. I'm sure it's decent. The reviews are middling. I'm sure it's decent. I did see the Whitney Houston biopic last year, and it was the definition of fine, middle of the road. If you didn't know anything about Whitney Houston, you walked out of that movie knowing some stuff about Whitney Houston. If you were me, you walked out of that movie going, well, they really skipped over the drug problems. Like they made a little reference to it towards the end, but man, did they really skip over her massive cocaine and crack addiction. All of these like glaring things. Now, granted, it was a PG-13 movie, and
the purpose was almost like almost a rehab of some of these biopics are not necessarily in the walk the line variety or those sort of things where
yeah. So that's what I'm getting at. My question to you is, are they making this movie for content, or are they making this movie for art? Yes, I know it's all for commerce. I'm not dumb. Commerce is the answer to any equation that you come up with. They want to make money. But are they doing this to put out content because, oh, it's the Beatles, everybody will watch this shit? Or is it, again, Christopher Nolan's biopic of J. Robert Oppenheimer was absolutely incredible. And it's probably going to win Best Picture. Okay. But it wasn't a cradle to casket movie. I've talked about this at nauseum on different shows on here. You have movies like The Aviator, that's a Howard Hughes biopic. It does cover like 25, 30 years, but it does it very intelligently. It never talks down to its audience. You've got Scorsese at the helm, DiCaprio in the lead. Kate Blanchett won a fucking Oscar playing Katharine Hepburn, and deserved it. It wasn't like the Freddie Mercury one.
But neither one of these are, hey, on paper, slam dunk, print money.
But right.
You're trying to pitch, okay, an Oppenheimer movie is going to be one of the biggest.
I understand, but you've got like when Christopher Nolan says he's going to make a biopic on J. Robert Oppenheimer, it's being taken seriously. When Marty Scorsese is like, I'm going to do the ultimate Howard Hughes biopic, and where I disagree with you, I think Sam Mendes is a tremendous talent. And I think it would take somebody that has decades of experience to take this seriously, but I'm very skeptical that this is being done for all of the wrong reasons and not for the right reasons. Because of the fact that there's the Aretha Franklin Respect movie. I heard it was fine. I didn't see it. I've seen so many of these music biopics that are greatest hits and they're PG-13 and they gloss over any of the negative stuff and they pop. That's all well, fine, and cool. On the other hand, I respect biopics like Jackie with Natalie Portman or the Kristen Stewart movie Spencer about Princess Diana. That whole movie took place over one weekend. Jackie was just like in the days following JFK's assassination, where it felt way more intimate, very real, vulnerable, blah, 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 blah. I say all this to say, and then I'm going to turn it back to you. I went and took my sisters to go see The Iron Claw. I'd already seen it. It's an incredible film, by the way. I'd already seen it once. It was Christmas Eve. They weren't doing nothing. So we went and saw The Iron Claw. And my sister Helen, who this channel knows, she watches movies based on my recommendations. She doesn't watch a lot of movies. A lot of the movies she watches are based on things like I told her, watch Oppenheimer, watch Killers of the Flower Moon, go see Barbie, right? And I asked her a couple of days later, I said, what'd you think of The Iron Claw? And she goes, I really liked it. But like kind of going forward, I wish they would just make really good documentaries about this sort of stuff because, spoiler alert for The Iron Claw, they omit one of the brothers and there are some other characters that they don't include in the movie. And her point was
there's also discrepancy on like the actual, definitely stuff that they missed over. They glossed over.
Sure. But her point was, and this is from she is the definition of a casual movie viewer. She would have much rather watched a 2-hour high production value documentary on the Von Erich family than watch this movie. And she kind of made the comment, like, going forward, I wish they would just make really good documentaries instead of, so like when they made this Beatles announcement, that was the first thing I thought of was, well, we already got really good you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So that's just basically, and I agree with Helen's assessment right there. Like if you're going to use her as the barometer of the casual viewer, and also like it's a point that we brought up to a certain degree on the last episode, especially if we used co-hosts on this network, Lego. Lego can't name you 5 Beatles songs, but she can name you everybody that's on, or name every Beatle. So
right.
There's going to be like a whole bunch of people coming into with the already armed with more knowledge than you probably have from the normal, not people like us.
Right.
But like,
because
just
this isn't Aretha Franklin. Like everybody knows her name, but they might not know anything about her. But like everybody can name the Beatles and they know what they look like. And
yeah,
they could probably name 3 songs, but yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely where my skepticism comes in, is not really, sorry, I'm reading Lego's comment in there.
It's all good. I see Legos in the chat. Hey.
Yeah, Rob used you as an example during one of our, and I don't think it was.
All right. Lego said that she could name 5 Beatles songs. Can you name 10?
Oh, if you're such a fan, name 5 Beatles. No, no, I'm not going to do that.
Well,
so,
by the way, I want to throw this out there just because it popped into my head. So
yeah.
I was thinking about this like really actively yesterday, and I was like, okay, Sony hires me. I'm going to direct these movies. What are my biggest?
Which
so
is
like
not out of the realm
obvious
of possibilities with Sony right now.
so hang on. So obviously you have all of the obvious obstacles and the pushing the rock up the mountain, all of the obvious ones. But I was actively thinking about this, and I'm like, all right, I'm shooting this movie. Sam Mendes, the director of, again, 1917, the guy's got really good movies under his belts. He's gonna want to go for a certain level of realism. Well, the first problem is this: these movies would have to be rated PG-13 in order to make the amount of money that Sony's going to want to make off of these movies. And I don't give a fuck what year you pick of the Beatles' life story. They're all chain smokers. I mean, John Lennon was notorious for smoking like a handful of cigarettes and chewing gum and then going right into the vocal booth to sing whatever song he was singing that day. Ringo was notorious for just sitting behind his drum kit. Again, most well-documented band in music history, smoking an entire pack of cigarettes while, I mean, it's very well documented. He would smoke a whole pack of cigarettes while he just watched them try to figure out the bridge to a song because he didn't have much else to contribute because he was the drummer. Well, for those of you that aren't aware of this, in film now, when the Batman movie came out 2 years ago, that was a big thing with Colin Farrell. The Penguin smokes either cigars or he smokes cigarettes with that like long filter from like the 30s. And they told him, Warner Brothers was like, you can't smoke. We want a PG-13 rating. You can't smoke in this movie. And he's like, not even a cigar. Like that's the Penguin. It's the reason why I've been so, the word hate is a strong word, but I've hated where they've been going with James Bond because he is an alcoholic, womanizing chain smoker. If you're not doing all 3 of those things simultaneously, you're talking about a different character. Go write a different character. The studio's so fucking scared though, because James Bond's such a big IP that they're scared to go rated R. But let me tell you, anybody watching this video that does not know this, your protagonists, those are usually like, most of the time they're the good guys. The protagonist is like the main focus of the movie. The antagonist would be obviously usually the villain, but not always. I'm not getting this semantics today. So the protagonist cannot smoke in a movie if you want a PG-13 rating. So I'm sorry, but if they say that the Beatles aren't going to chain smoke cigarettes in these movies, I'm out. I'm boycotting it because you've totally lost a whole level of realism that I'm now no longer interested in. I'm sorry. For me, that's a deal breaker. You know what I mean? It would be like if James Bond stopped banging 3 girls in a movie. That's a deal breaker. That's not James Bond. That's a different character. Go write that character. Don't fuck up this character.
So I'm going to bring up a question that Lego put in here, and I think I am the person to answer this question. Lego asked, is smoking inherently necessary? Does it have to be in it to show the human beings? I will tell you, as somebody, clearly, if you watch this, I'm a smoker. It does dictate so much habit, and especially when it comes to, like, it's just one of those things where, to you, non-smoker doesn't seem like a big deal, but for somebody like me, and I don't really want to keep going down this rabbit hole on this and
no, but to kind of
but I get your point on that.
To wrap it up with a bow, I'm an ex-smoker. How many times have you gone outside? Because we live in a world where people don't smoke indoors as much anymore. You might, I don't, I didn't. How many times do you go out for a smoke break and come up with a great idea for something? How many times did the Beatles go for a smoke break and then it's like, oh, I think I figured out the bridge. So to me, yes, I understand what Lego's saying, but I'm sorry. I'm going to die on this hill. It's integral to the characters.
And also integral to the time period of what it was. I mean, this is back when smoking cigarettes on airplanes was a normal thing. But yeah, so I just want to say, like, I don't know if I have a strong with the smoking thing. I don't think that's really... I get what you're saying.
Sure.
Because it lends to the authenticity. Sure. And you're just going to whitewash it just because the society now has a problem with that.
Are they
like, I get that.
Lennon's abuse to Cynthia Lennon as well? I mean, like, then where's the line?
We also don't know what, we don't know based on what is going to be the actual content of what it is. So I'm just like I said, my skepticism just comes from the ambition. And the thing that you and I talked about in there, I was like, if you're going to do this as a theatrical release, this is a huge gamble. This isn't a slam dunk. Especially when you have as skittish of a movie-going audience as we have now, compared to what it was beforehand. All it does is take the first or the second one to be either middling or bad, and you're already lost in the water for the two other ones, or any variation on the combo. Like, the first two are the most important. That's why when you said, if I was going to do this, I would do like either Lennon and McCartney first, like one of those two, George, sandwich Ringo, and then bookend it with whoever you want on the, whether you're George or John. Yeah, John or Paul. So, but yeah, so my problems were just kind of the ambitions. Like I said, I think this announcement is the announcement. I think a lot of people got too hype, and you and I discussed this about, especially when it comes to the bubble of movie people culture. They get a little too excited by like just the announcement, and then we get into like the hype and stuff. And to me, this is probably not going to be the final form of what this ends up being. If you throw it on a streaming service and it doesn't do well, I mean, you take the L.
But then why do it? Because it's the fucking it's the mountain peak. No offense to the Motley Crue movie, but to have made that for Netflix, that makes sense for Motley Crue. This is the biggest band of all time. Now, I did think of a point while you were talking. On the flip side of the coin, a thing that could hurt the movie is, to Lego's credit, she can name quite a few Beatles songs. So maybe people are going into this movie and they do know quite a bit. So it's like, whether it's, kind of whitewashing, not in race or ethnicity, but just like no smoking. We're not going to talk about drug problems. We're not going to talk, we're going to skip over all that and kind of give you this glossy movie. People would turn on that violently. They would turn on that movie and be like, that's not based on the biographies I've read. Now, also with this, obviously McCartney and Ringo, they're all involved in this. So, I liked Rocket Man. I liked Rocket Man a lot better than most of the music biopics of the last decade. But Elton John was pretty vocal about how he was cool with them showing some of the things that they showed in that movie. But I don't know. That's what I'm more skeptical about than anything. And if one of these movies does not financially do well, boy, it's going to hurt the whole thing. If the Ringo movie tanks, that makes the studio look bad. You know what I mean?
And those are basically my points, is the ambition and also like the business aspect. And also, I just don't think right now this is going to be the final form. Like, this may be the announcement. This is so in development. Like,
and 2027 they plan on having the first of these movies come out in less than 3 years, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way.
So that's just basically what and I don't think I missed any of the points that I brought up, because you and I, like, usually most of the time, like, we at least see where each other's coming from, but we may have different. This is one of the few times where I think every point that we were making to each other in the Discord, it was like, oh no, like, that's exactly, I'm right 100%.
We're on the same page.
We're on the same page, which isn't really
never happens. Well, it does.
Yeah.
It does. But it's like,
but there's always like a caveat where we always have a different like take on it. But no, we were almost on the exact same page. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to jump on here real quick and discuss this, because we, for us to have that type of synergy.
Well, and Dell comment, I didn't. So the whole, two last things and we can end the show. One, it was overwhelmingly positive feedback from this announcement yesterday, at least in the circles that I see on social media. I didn't see anybody questioning. I didn't see any level of skepticism. It was all, can't wait. And
well, that goes.
a lot of these people that I was reading, I'm like, you're a YouTuber, or you're a film critic, or you do music journalism. And again, these are people I respect. And I'm just thinking, like, I know they're all smart enough to know how badly this could turn out. Not saying we want to will that into fruition.
Yeah.
But legitimately, logistically,
let's have some critical thinking go on here.
It's a lot of critical thing. Again, like I said, I'm not in charge of this project, but I stopped 30 seconds in when I got to the smoking barrier. Trust me, there's another 100 barriers. That was just the first one that I got to, and I stopped right there, and I was like, well, that's something good to bring up on the show. The last thing I want to say is, I saw a lot of people talking about casting. You have to go with all unknowns. And you have to go with people that look just like them, and boy, they better be able to do the perfect impression, like, or be from Liverpool. Like, I don't want to. No, I love these actors, but like, I don't want to see Barry Keoghan's too fucking old to be in this movie, because by the time they shoot it, he'll be the age that they were when they broke up. Like, George was 18, 19 years old when they came over here to America. So, like, if I'm the casting director, I'm specifically targeting kids that are like 15, 16, 17 right now to play these people, so that by the time we film them, they're 18, 19, 20, 21.
Yeah, I mean, that goes, like I said, that's more into like the weeds of the actual filmmaking process. So, and you take more of a approach on that than I do. I'm just looking at it from logistical and business end, where I'm just like, I just don't see this being the final product. Right. And we both thought it was pretty strange of the rah nature of everything. But then again, like, that goes into a larger discussion, and this is not the movie, quote unquote, show of the channel. So, but I have thoughts on the rah. Let's be part of the PR machine. Let's you making your viewpoints part of it, instead of taking like an actual approach of like, okay, here's where this could go wrong. And like, it's, no, this is great. Everything's great. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be the greatest movie of all time until the next movie comes out. And then that will be the greatest movie. I
have a question. So, what's the budget for each film? 200 million, 150 million?
I mean, it also depends on the ambition. Like I said, it's not going to be Lord of the Rings, but it is a Lord of the Rings effort, because you're doing so much in a short period of time.
And it's a period piece. It's a period piece. Lord of the Rings is a fantasy. So it's of a period, but it's a fantasy. So they went to New Zealand.
I'm just talking more of it stacking up. Not,
right.
Since you're doing 4 in a row, I'm not saying like that's when I made my comparison to Lord of the Rings, was not because of budget or because I'm just talking about just the sheer
filming back to back,
doing 4, and I'm going to assume these are going to be somewhat simultaneous if they're going to.
They would have to all be simultaneous if they have intersecting scenes, because again, if you're dealing with kids that are 18, 19, 20 years old, you could, like, if you were to reshoot that scene a year later, you can tell. It's not really until you get into your mid-20s that you might be able to scoop by for a couple of years. Anyways, this is not Characters of Culture, but thank you for doing this show with me, because I'm really glad we had this conversation. Because again, we're not negative, we're just skeptical. And there's
you and I are going to see these regardless, even if they're good, bad. Even if the first one's bad, we're going to end up watching all of this. But I think it was important that we just jump on here and talk about this because this is, like you were mentioning, we weren't seeing the type of discourse or the type of talk about it that you and I naturally kind of gravitated to. So we wanted to jump on here just in case there's people out there who have the same thoughts or, maybe not have thought of it. So
love the Beatles.
Excellent.
All right, buddy. Where can everybody find you at? We're gonna get out of here.
Delicommon on Instagram. Yeah, sorry, we're rushing. We got another show to jump into. If you're watching after the fact, we are going to be on What the Show here in about 10 minutes. It'll probably be, if you're seeing this, it's probably after the fact. So go over there to @WhatTheShow on YouTube. Rob and I will be over there, as they call it, the Rob Fishbeck Network music special. So otherwise, @Delicommon on Instagram, Facebook, and Delicommon.com if you want, especially with my photography. So where can find you?
You can find me at Rob Fishbeck. Let us know in the comments what you guys think. If you're still watching this video, I probably should have said that up top, but let us know. I want to know what everybody thinks, and I be honest, and it's cool to it's okay to disagree as long as we respect each other's opinions.
Oh yeah.
So all right, later guys. We'll see you.